This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Do you hear that whisper? That little voice that tugs at your heart, telling you to start living your best life. If that sounds like you, then now is the time to join Nectar Growth. It's the only place online where you can connect with and learn from great coaches with different areas of expertise. Why live another day not believing that you're enough, not seeing all that is possible for you? Why live another day dimming your own light? Nectar is the perfect place for you to discover the real you and uncover who you're meant to be. Life is a journey that we are not meant to walk alone. Nectar gives you a nurturing and supportive community to walk with you on your journey. Start living your best life and see what is truly possible. Come join us at nectargrowth.com. You know you're worth it.
Ride.
Are you sitting on $1 million hobby? Platforms like Etsy have helped millions of sellers profit from their talents and passions by turning once hobbies into businesses. Joining me today is Victoria Wieck, an immigrant from South Korea who's built a business from zero to 500 million in retail sales by unleashing her passion for jewelry design. Welcome, Victoria.
Well, thank you for inviting me. How exciting to be on your show.
I'm really intrigued by your story. I'm also intrigued by your jewelry because I took a little peek at your website before we got started, and I just love what you do. Can you maybe share where your story began?
Yeah, so I was born in South Korea at a time, so I don't want to completely date myself, but at a time when girls were really not, preferred by parents. As just well, my parents actually preferred girls, but because my dad grew up with boys and he wanted to have some girls, but society didn't really, it was not kind to girls with big dreams outside of the home. So since he had 4 girls, and the girls really didn't go to college in those days, we were supposed to be looking for our best, the husbands, things like that. So he said that if my daughters wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, let her be the best stay-at-home mom, but let her be her choice, not the slightest choice. So he actually bravely brought all of us to America. And I had a pretty decent life in Korea, but, we weren't like super rich or anything like that, but we had everything we needed. We lived the upper middle class life there. And then when we got here, at that time, Korea was run by a military junta, a dictator, and they froze all our assets. And so we started with $30 that actually was in my father's pocket, because the next day he went to the bank, try to find, get some money out, and there was nothing there. So with the family of 7, $30 in his pocket, didn't speak English. Actually, he's never really worked. He was kind of a real upper middle class person that, he kind of went to the office, I didn't really see him work. So it was a huge transformation at that time. And, basically I had to kind of believe in myself. We didn't really have a choice other than to just believe that things will get better. And eventually I did everything I was told to do by society in America, as well as my parents, which was to, get good grades in school, try hard, work hard, get a great job, climb the corporate ladder, do all that stuff. So I did that for a while. I was emotionally suffocating at that time because I was in like a finance industry, and in my heart, I'm an artist. And so I just took a leap of faith at that time and started a small company. And I really only wanted to make like $2,000 to $3,000 a month. $3,000 a month was my home run scenario. And but what was important to me was to spend time with my kids. And I wanted to work 20 hours a week, and ideally $3,000 a month, but I could have lived on $1,500 a month. I mean, I didn't own a home or anything like that, drove a real beat up old car. So now years later, I've kind of overachieved that goal. And now I've, built a $500 million business. And so that's my story.
Wow. So can you share with us that point when you first realized that you wanted to venture out on your own and what those first steps were? Because you're in the jewelry design business, which is a pretty competitive market.
Yeah. So, what happened was, when I mentor people and I coach people, and I do a lot of free volunteer work now. I mean, I don't really need to make money at the moment. And so I do a lot of volunteer work. And when I talk to people, here's what I say. Sometimes when, horrible things happen to you, like we had everything taken away. We had every penny and everything, all our properties, we had to leave all that in Korea. And we didn't get them back until like my father was actually successful 30 years later. When all those things happen to you, you could take a step back and, do horrible things. But in my case, it was like, okay, I have no choice at all. So I learned to speak English, did all this stuff. So when I started my own company, everybody told me, you're crazy. You have a master's degree. You could go get a great job. You could have a great life. Why would you risk all that and start designing jewelry of all things? Okay. This was like, people would tell me this. I was like crazy. My old bosses, told me, if your business is going to fail, it's not going to be when it's going to fail, it's going to be when you fail. Call me first. I'll give you a job. So I stacked up business cards. My parents told me the same thing. You should, just like, you worked hard, take the easy road. And I said to myself, you know what? God didn't put me on this earth now to go through all that so I can just starve. I do have a degree and I could always go find a job. So I want to go fulfill my dream. This is, after all, the promised land where in America, where all dreams supposedly come true. So I started that journey, and it turned out that I actually had a talent a little bit, and I also think I was very lucky in terms of timing, because back then in the 1989 when I started my company, most women, females working in the corporate America, we were the first generation of females that were working in a managerial capacity. Before that, there were administrative, secretaries, receptionists, whatever. We had titles like director of marketing, vice president of this or that. None of us were CEOs or anything, but, they worked really hard for it. And we all dressed like men. We had like shirts and we had little suits. And there was no way to feminize one person to the next person. We all felt like we look like men. And, from the back, if you would see a conference room full of people, you never knew which one. We'd have to look at the shoes to find out which one had heels. So in that time, when jewelry was sold by the industry as like the daytime jewelry, and the nighttime jewelry was fancy, sparkling diamonds. It was all sold for status. Like, this is a 2-carat diamond for X amount of money. There was no design. I came up with the jewelry that you could wear to work. That's, elegant, sophisticated, very understated, that actually, said a lot about you. You have some sense of style, you respect people, you're understated, and yet you have a little class, and it's less money, and it's heirloom quality. Like I brought in a lot of silver and gold, but they were very toned down pieces. And, lo and behold, nobody was really doing it. So I kind of had the whole market to myself for a while.
So is it jewelry that you design?
Oh, of course.
So you design all of them, because when I looked at it, I'm a big fan of Swarovski jewelry. Yeah. And I'm not a sort of, a very showy person, but I got into Swarovski jewelry because I like things that sparkle. But I didn't like diamonds because there's a lot of negativity behind the diamond industry. And in fact, when I was up in the Northwest Territories a few years ago, I saw a diamond mine, and I saw what it actually did. Like, they drained a lake, and and all I could think about was what happened to the fish. And it just, it just didn't fit with me. And that's when I sort of got into Swarovski jewelry. And I saw your designs, and they're beautiful. I mean, I saw several pieces that I started making a Christmas list for myself.
Well, you know what, Lucy, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I don't do that often. But the jewelry industry, the diamond industry, is really very secretive. It's something that most people don't understand. I happen to have an amazing relationship with Swarovski. In fact, I'm one of the few people. I mean, I don't know how many designers have gone there, but it's like you can count them on the one hand that have actually toured their factories in Austria. Um, but I agree with you on the whole diamonds and what it does to society, what it does to the movie Blood Diamonds. It kind of really depicts pretty accurately what happens, and they will tell you whenever you ask them like, why is it so rough? And it does all these environmental damage. It does a lot of damage to people. 3.8 million people have died mining diamonds in the history of mankind. They will tell you like, we go to the poorest countries on earth, poorest places on earth. And I'm like, no, you're not. Why are they still poor when you've been mining for 1,000 years? Why are
Exactly.
they still poor? Because
Exactly.
even when they say that when they mine and they're done with everything, and they will actually like refill a lake and all that, all the social damage has been already been done. So I agree with you on that. And that's why when you go to my website, almost everything I do is either like a Swarovski cubic zirconia, or I do gemstones. That doesn't have the price tag of diamonds, so people aren't getting really hurt by that. And a lot of them are not dug, underground. And my daughter and I actually have I believe it's the only company out there that does 100% lab grown. So we don't do any earth mine diamonds, lab grown diamonds or created diamonds. We don't believe in that stuff. So just briefly that, I just don't like the idea that people are getting married with some sort of a lie, or it may not even be a lie, but it may be something that you are not aware about. And, you later on 20 years down the line and you go, oh my God, like
I
they
feel
to
guilty.
such and such lake. And that's where my diamond came from. And, there's nothing there now other than devastation and some water.
I
So
mean, yeah,
they're educating people on that.
yeah, and I feel guilty for the
Yeah.
diamonds. I don't have much. When we got married, we were, broke like most young couples. Um, but whatever diamond elements I have in my rings, there is a certain amount of guilt behind it because I don't know how they came to market.
Right.
I also don't know um what it did to our planet in mining them.
Yeah.
And it's just personal choice that.
Well,
And
just to clarify, not every diamond uh,
no.
is that damaging. So just want you to know quickly that if you want a solitaire, like a 2-3 carat solitaire, and you want to be sure that it hasn't gone through all that, like human damage or the environmental damage, you buy the Canadian mined diamond in the Canadian Arctic. They're actually, mined with technology. They're not. It's a very different process. They're much more expensive, and they have a maple leaf already like engraved.
Yeah.
Canada. The Argyle mine out in Australia, very similar. But anything mined in 23 countries in Africa, you have to, there's not real chain of custody there for every single cutting center. So, I just want people to believe, I'm not saying that every diamond causes damage. I'm just saying that you should be aware, like you owe it to yourself to at least investigate before you buy anything.
Yeah, if you're going to drop a couple of grand on a ring,
Yeah, for sure.
you want to know that it's real. And I was also really surprised when I learned that, because I always wondered, well, first of all, what makes a diamond so expensive? Who puts
Yeah.
the price on it? And I was curious of how they became the ring for engagements. And wasn't it part of a marketing campaign? Was it?
Yeah, it's a brainwashing thing because actually in China, believe it or not, I think something like 60% of Chinese population who are married at my age they don't have a ring. They don't actually get married in a ring. They have a ceremony, all that stuff. There was no ring for a guy or a girl. And it's a huge market for people like us now because they are all like, oh my God, we got married with no ring. Why not? But culturally, most cultures didn't actually, require that. But that's for whole other story. Like, we can actually discuss the whole diamonds and wedding rings and the brainwashing and marketing campaigns. But when I built my company, the one thing I'll tell you from upfront, anything that caused me to not sleep at night, I didn't sell it. So, anything that caused me to, I was always transparent. Like, when I first started my company, I had no money. So in jewelry, you have to have some samples. Even if you're going to deal in Swarovski stones, you have to have samples made. And, you would show a bunch, like 50, 100 samples so that, a department store buyer might want to look at it. Well, I didn't have money to make a single sample. So, I had a sketch, like a lookbook. I sketched them out and I would go to the local department store. But Neiman Marcus in Beverly Hills was about 20 miles from me. So there's Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue right across from one another, like in Hollywoodville. I walked in and I was very honest. I told people, look, I have no experience in jewelry. I am not a professional designer. I have no money. But I aspire to be one someday. And I have this lookbook, and if I know your time is very valuable, but if you could look at it and like pick just a few things that might potentially have some potential, I'd be very appreciative of your time. And I would show them, like, I never really got the manager of the department store, but I'd get either like sales clerk that's on the shift that day, or sometimes I'd get an assistant manager. They'd have several assistant managers that they'd always want to check out what's new. So I told them I have no money, I have no experience, and believe it or not, they took a look at it and they're like, oh my God, these are absolutely beautiful. And most of our customers that come here to the Beverly Hills store, they don't want to have anything that's in the case that, that's all over the world. I mean, they want to have something that's really unique, and they love like ordering from the lookbooks. And so, she sold a few pieces for me, like right there from the book.
Wow.
I'm like, well, aren't you going to ask me like how much these things cost or anything? And they're like, no, here it doesn't, literally, like the higher price, the better. Then I went across the street to Saks Fifth Avenue. They did the same thing. And, but I knew that rest of America was not like that. So I then went to all the other stores. I think I visited like more than 30 stores, and they all gave me their feedback. And I was able to get like 8 or 9 pieces that I felt that it had a very broad appeal. So that's how I started my company. So, this honesty thing is a very big key factor in, as in your show, life is really like it's a giant roller coaster.
Oh yeah.
And what happens is, when horrible things happen to you, when you get a detour, you fall off the train, whatever, there's a lot of things you can't control, and you could blame, this or that or whatever. But the one thing that you still do have control over is your integrity, your honesty, and who you are. And I think that I've always like really just been very obstinate about that. Like whenever major department stores or, major buyers that would buy millions of dollars would tell me, like, you don't have to have the Swarovski. Swarovski actually makes like, tip top grade, and then they'll have like what they call just a little bit, like every so often the machine will go just a little bit off, and then it would be still so beautiful. Human eyes can't detect it, but they Swarovski being the company they are, they will actually separate the ones that are a tiny bit off. And they're like, if you mix them up, no one's going to know. I said, well, but I know. And that bothers me. So yeah. I'd rather make less money, but I know, and I want to sleep at night because I can't design nice things if I can't sleep. So, I think that's really important that, you have that, look, when you go from zero and the first million was like, oh my God, like, it took me a couple of years to get to that point, but it was like, crazy good. But, after like $100 million, everything else, I don't even count that. It's just like, it doesn't even matter. Your life doesn't change. So the idea that you would then change your morals or change your standard, why?
And it's,
I don't
you
get
know,
it.
no, and it's funny because my husband and I had a conversation the other day. Um, we'd watched again, I don't know if you've seen the movie called Yesterday.
I
It's a,
haven't.
it's about a guy who, gets hit by a bus and he's an aspiring musician. He gets hit by a bus, wakes up, and suddenly um, he plays one of the Beatles songs and nobody knows what he's playing because something happened and he woke up in a different reality
Oh,
and the
okay.
Beatles didn't exist.
I love the
So,
song today, by the way.
oh yeah, so he was actually trying to recreate all of these Beatles songs. So he was becoming more and more popular, and he eventually ended up in LA somewhere. And the record executive said to him, "Are you ready to take the chalice and become something that you've never become before?" And in that moment, you could see the moral dilemma because he just wanted to be himself and
Right.
go after the girl that he's
Yeah.
was not brave enough to go after. And he temporarily got caught holding that chalice,
Yeah.
but then quickly realized that that's not what he actually wanted in life. So it was, I could see the parallels with
Yeah.
anybody that's facing a potential situation where, you know, you could be looking at extreme wealth, and it's, you know, what does that mean for your moral compass?
Right.
And part of the conversation with my husband is I have such a fiercely strong moral compass that if in the slightest way something feels off to me, I just can't do it.
Me too. You know what? I think that a lot of creative people, if they're really successful, they're kind of, I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of them are like that because like that is all the designs that I do are just like a snapshot of how I felt at that moment. So, I will do butterflies this year, butterflies next year, butterflies different years because I love butterflies. But there might be different colorations. Their wings might be, some of them are in flight, some of them had just landed. Like usually there's a feeling of, I start all my designs with the feeling. So when you've given up your feeling to somebody else or some monetary reason, your designs stop becoming unique and interesting. So for me, that's not even an option. But here's the thing. I mean, one can argue that I have extreme wealth, but you only get that by not really caring about the money. So just quickly in Asian, I wouldn't say in Asian culture because Asia is such a huge continent, but I would say in my culture, like where I was, the little town I come from, it's like a sleepy little seaside village, but where I come from, all my grandmother's friends and all those people would tell me that success is not money, it's not fame, it's not degrees. It's really a state, a perfectly balanced state of 5 different things. And the first thing in the order, the first thing coming up there is like the first thing is health. So if you don't have great health, it doesn't matter how much money you have. You're not going to buy another day if you got cancer and you're terminal. Okay, you're not going to. All the money isn't going to help you. So health is one, and then the second thing is the quality of your relationships. Because if you don't have a support system, you don't have, a body of people that you can count on. It makes life very miserable. And then the third thing I think is wisdom. And then fourth is your longevity of life. And then the last thing there is wealth. So if you try to go after extreme wealth at any cost, you might not sleep at night. You might be working 24/7. You might not see your children. You might not see your parents. You might get sick and have horrible relationships. And how many people do we know that do that? I mean, just look at Hollywood. All those people
Exactly.
who are
And
just fucking making a ton of money and yet like they hate everybody. So when you think about that 5 things, I would say that the way I've lived my life is very, very close to that. Like I'm a real health freak when it comes to, living healthy, meaning not necessarily the kind of stuff you eat, but, getting enough sleep, taking time to, like smell the roses, doing things that you're not good at so that, you can kind of laugh at yourself sometimes and appreciate the things that you are actually good at. I mean, I'm a horrible golfer.
I don't even bother.
I have rarely, like literally like 4 holes later, I won't give up, but I'll call up the pro shop and I'll say, hey, like my shots might start to look better if I had a glass of wine or something, because this thing is like not going anywhere. I mean, seriously, like there are things that I'm horrible at. But I enjoy friendships on the golf course. I enjoy the scenery. I mean, I tried to paddleboard sometime one day in Hawaii, and I just drank so much seawater, it was just ridiculous. I mean, I was like, whatever.
I did that.
I tried that,
I
So
tried
yeah,
tried paddle boarding about a month
a lot of
ago.
energy. It takes a lot of energy and balance. My goodness.
Did such a face plant into the water. I was mad, and I wasn't mad that I fell off the paddleboard. I was mad that my husband didn't have the drone up in time to catch me falling off, because I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, well, my kids had to rescue me. But I mean, seriously, like if you look at the 5, so then being healthy in the mind and in the body, so you're not abusing like substance, all this stuff, like you don't have to numb yourself. And then relationships, same thing. All great relationships take a lot of effort on both parts. Whether that's a sister-in-law or your parents or your kids. It's healthy to have that conversation every once in a while. So, all those things, like wisdom is another one. Like a lot of people don't have common sense nowadays, and they'll just go whatever the social media says it's in or hot or whatever. I mean, I'm in the fashion business, and everybody says like there's a new, like the burgundy is a new black or the gray is a new black. I'm like, black is black, okay? Like there's no other thing. And when they say the white pants are in or whatever, I look horrible in white pants. I'm short. And it makes me look white. I don't look at that. It's just kind of like use your common sense, right? If you look horrible in yellow, and yellow is in color, get a little scarf or something, but don't buy a yellow suit. It's just stupid. So wisdom. So when I think about those things, I used to think my grandmother was kind of nuts, especially when I first came to America. I used to think, my grandma is like 100 years old and she never evolved. But now that I think about all that, how wise they were in that generation, so, I'm kind of really lucky that I kind of grew up in that environment, and I didn't focus on money. The money was the last thing. I told you in the beginning, I only wanted $2,000 a month.
Yeah. And, I think your authenticity is what shines through in everything. And you've done exactly what your grandmother's formula is that once you reach that level of wealth, you're now turning around and you're helping other people, because as you mentioned earlier, you do coach and you also have a podcast.
Right. I think that paying it forward, it's like, I didn't want to have a podcast. I didn't want to write a book. I didn't want to coach because I felt like I've heard my story is inspiring, and I've heard that I should be coaching. I've heard I should be writing a book. And I said, you know what? I'm a really boring person. Like, I believe in very simple things. I'm such a boring person that if I were to write a book, I'd have to really struggle to get 3 chapters in, because there's nothing really exciting about me, really. And I also felt like how I did my life, it worked for me. But who am I to preach it to other people? If somebody wants to just go after money and they don't care about having a relationship, maybe it works for them. I don't know. For me, having a family, having great friends, having people I care about actually means a lot more to me than others. But, I'm not going to judge somebody who doesn't have those values. So I didn't want to do that. Then I started coaching. And then because that is so core to who I am, what I believe, it just kind of seeps out, even though I'm not preaching it. So what happens is like, what I found is that so many people that I connect with, that I coach, they really kind of resonate with that value system. And it's good. I mean, like sometimes when I ask people, well, who's your target audience? Sometimes they'll say, oh, I can talk to everybody, and, all women love jewelry, for example. Like, I can design jewelry for, heavy set women, thin women, old women, young women. I can, girl who are hip and modern, I can design for all of them. Yes, you can. But who do you really want to serve? And they still like, and I said, if I always say like this, if money was absolutely no object, and that you have $1 billion in the bank, like tomorrow morning, and it's going to be guaranteed to be there all day long, every day, what would you do with your time? Then the answer is different. Because even though they don't think that all this monetary thing kind of gets in, because I'm like, who would you rather spend time with? People in your grandmother's age, people who are really fashionistas. Like, who are the people you see yourself hanging out with? And the other thing I do is I ask people to sort of like, and it's a very Asian thing. My grandmother did this. She basically planned out her whole funeral. And so I asked people like, let's design your funeral. I mean, it could be 50 years from now, it could be 70 years from now, it could be 7 days from now. We don't know. But like, who's going to be there? Who's going to write the eulogy? What are they going to say about you? What would you like them to say about you? It kind of gets people to think about that for a little bit, like, because I think that, I ask people too, like, why are you working? Why do you want to, make money and do, is it just to pay your bills? Is that to like, you want to make a lot of money and help people, or you want to make a lot of money and help, your family or whatever? Why do you do this? Because if you think about that, you want to make sure that at the end of your journey, if you hit all the right strides and everything goes your way and you actually do 8-9 figures, you want to look back and go, you know what? I did it the hard way, and I am now a better person because I've seen all the landmines. I've seen some bad people, I've seen good people, and I've seen all of this, okay, as a result of going through this journey. Because in business, we went to some nasty people. And somehow now I have not only am I a better person, but I now have the financial means to actually action my better moral compass and help other people reach that. And I think that is the beauty of succeeding, not just collecting things, because, you're never going to find happiness in monetary things. I don't care.
No. And it's funny because everything that I'm doing now, I was, my other self. I didn't have a clue about any of this. And I hit rock bottom about 5 years ago. And that's where I had to uncover and deal with a lot of things. And that's what led into starting this podcast. It's about sharing my journey because I remember how lonely and lost I felt.
Right.
When I was at rock bottom, and I didn't know where to turn, and I don't want anyone else to feel that way. So
Right.
That's led, sharing my story and sharing resources is what led into the podcast. And then through creating the podcast, I'm now creating an online platform to connect people with the resources and the coaches that they need. People have asked me when I'm going to start coaching, and I'm like, that's not what I want to do. That's not, I'll share my story. And if, you're working through something, we can talk about it. But my heart doesn't lie in coaching people.
Yeah.
It's there to connect people with the coaches that they need to solve whatever they're working on.
Yeah, I completely hear where you're coming from, because I actually resisted coaching for the longest time for that reason too. Because it's, first of all, being a coach is such a responsibility. It's such a responsibility. Let me tell you what I do, because I think a lot of people find this really interesting. I believe everything happens for the best, and I believe there are no coincidences. Like, when you're a host of a podcast, you meet some amazing people. I mean, it's opened crazy doors for me, and I learn so much from every guest that comes on my show. But what I do is I signed up to a mastermind class, and they kind of sort of position themselves as this elite, high level people that are gonna be like the 8-9 figure people, that want to save time and all this stuff. It was everything but that. They actually like gave me all these affiliates for, 50, 10, $100,000 stuff that they knew nothing about, but they were going to get commission. So they basically told me to go buy all this stuff. And then I realized, like what I really want to do is just help people. And I've been doing up to this year, up to last month, I've done free workshops monthly, and I've shared and shared and shared. Like it's all free. And then one time I did a webinar, and I think the first hour I had 300 people sign up. And then like by the time I actually did the webinar, I had like 1,000 people sign up for this thing. And then I realized I can't answer 1,000 people's questions, in a Zoom session. So I am now limiting that at the free things again. But what I do is like whatever I coach, I want to make sure it's very low in price, and that whatever online course they take, I don't want them to be on their own, just self-guided stuff. I actually will do like a weekly Zoom session so that they can actually ask a real question about their real business and share everything. So, what I do is a little different than how most people, I don't want them to I want to hold their hand in the beginning, like what's your strategy? What are the 3 things that actually challenge you that you don't think you can overcome? And what's your home run situation? What, everything happened the right way. How do you see yourself 10 years from now? Because that's what we're going to get to. And then at the end of the whole thing, I also give them like a one-on-one consultation on how they're going to, go out in the world and, just make sure that, like there is a real focused strategy on that. Plus they get the 3 months. I do this so that they could easily afford it, and I think it's just, I have a better conscience of doing that than just charging, like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for this. So first of all, anybody who wants to come to my world and they want to get the free webinars, they're usually about 45 minutes long. There's no pressure for them to buy anything. And they get, storytelling mastery, because I teach people how to get on TV. And because, I have a TV show for 24 years straight. And how to use video for influencing their products. And the other thing that's really important to, that I wish people would just sometimes I just want to shake some people, because I say to people, if you're a small business owner, the best thing that you have going for you is your story. What makes you tick? Who are you? What makes you unique, right? Because look, if you came up with another, flavored bottled water, let's say, just argument's sake, who are you going to compete with? Coca-Cola, Avion, these companies, they have this mega whatever. But if you say, hey, I'm Lucy Quigley, and I have, I invented this bottled water because I was deficient in vitamin D. I was this and that. And, during COVID, I was told to drink a ton of water, but I just hated drinking water. And I, came up with this thing, and it's just so great. And, I just wanted to help people. And, and they're like, you know what? That Lucy person just seems so authentic. And, I completely understand that, because I don't want to drink water either. And, she invented this thing because, well, but, that's a story that could be multiplied 1,000,000 times. And I tell people, your story is unique. You need to shape that story so that you are emotionally connecting to millions of people that want to fall in love with you, because people are actually looking for people that they want to fall in love with. That's the truth.
So true.
They hate people that are perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, really, you're like a size 2, perfect hair, perfect whatever, a perfect boyfriend, and you're going to preach to me like what I should be doing? Like, no, I don't want to hear you.
Agreed.
I'm sorry. So people love underdogs. And I tell people, you need to, now when somebody like me, I can tell an immigrant story, I can tell a mom story, I could tell a designer story, I could, tell them I won the awards or whatever. What story do you tell in the first 30 seconds you meet someone that's going to impact them? That's going to make you so memorable in all the right ways. So I teach these things all free. They come to my thing. It's all free. A lot of the marketing strategies, like who is your target market, all that stuff. So, but if there are people that definitely want that next level coaching, and then they can sign up for something. But it's that's what I do now, and I really enjoy that, actually.
And that's what's important, is doing what fills your heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Victoria, as we wrap up, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Okay, so here is it's not really the wisdom, but I just want this is my plea to you, for all of you who are listening. And this is my plea to you, and it's also my gift, which is, being inspired. A lot of people, and I've been interviewed over 300 times, by all the mainstream media and so forth, but they tell me that my story is inspiring and I'm an encouraging person. So being inspired, encouraging, all of these words are great. But what I'd like you to do, the reason why I'm on any podcast at all, is to cause you to take a single action. Because without action, all the inspiration, the motivation, the encouragement, everything else, it's just out the window. It's just a pipe dream. It stays there. So take a single action. It's like if you say every New Year's, okay, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, or I'm going to lose some weight. Like, everybody thinks like they're heavier New Year's time than any other time. So 80% of American people, especially women, have some sort of weight loss or fitness thing on their New Year's resolution. By February, 75% of those people have already given up their hope to do that. Now, this is very similar. Like you have a dream, you envision you wish your life was different, and you say, I'm going to take a course, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then February, you're like, oh, I'm stuck in this rut. So I like you to think about it this way. If you say to yourself, I really have to get my act together this year, and I'm going to, be more fit, I'm going to do, during COVID, all this stuff. Okay, it's great. But if you said today, you know what? Okay, enough already. I'm going to lose 10 pounds in the next 10 weeks. And I'm going to be more fit. I'm going to have my heart rate down, whatever, for the next 10 weeks. So now you are looking at 1 pound a week for the next 10 weeks. And then you say, now, what am I willing to do for that? Okay. So you say to yourself, okay, you know what? I'm going to cut out one of my toast slices in the morning and cut out the butter and whatever else that go with that. And then I'm just going to walk my dog for half an hour. Okay. And I'm going to do this every day. Now that doesn't seem like it's a huge thing. Tomorrow I'm going to give up, wine for my, dinner. And then the next day I'm going to give up, half of my sandwich. I'm going to eat only a half. It doesn't restrict you, but it actually gets you thinking about what am I willing to do? Well, 10 weeks down the line, if you do that and you say, I'm going to just kind of try it. I'm not even going to be committing to this 100%. And so you do this half the time you cheat, half the time you actually stick to this thing. 10 weeks from when you said it, and you go back and you go, darn, I wasn't even that strict and it wasn't that bad. And I still lost 7 pounds. Wow. If I did that 4 times this year, geez, that's already, I'm at my goal. So what I'd like you to do today is, at least redefine your dream, putting into context what I just said to you earlier, which is the 5 things: your health, the relationships, the wealth, all those things. Go back and listen to this again if you have to, but look at all those things and say to yourself, I am going to now redefine my dream. Here's my new dream. And here's what I think I can do in the next year. And here's what I can do today. So the single action you can take today, even if it's just like writing down what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to actually do, believe me, there's a saying in ancient China, I think it's a Chinese proverb that says that 1,000-mile journey starts with a single step. It doesn't have to be a big step. It doesn't have to be a famous step. It just starts with a single step. So that's really my plea to you, because right now, my mission in life is to help like 1 million women become millionaires. I want to create 1 million millionaires. And it's not that difficult. If all of you just do one thing today, and then tomorrow you do the next thing. I'm all into this single, look at where I started. $2,000 a month was my goal. And
here you are. And I'm all about the baby steps, because you're absolutely right. It's those baby steps that make up our journeys.
Sure. Absolutely.
Such great information to share with our listeners, Victoria. So where's the best place for people to connect and maybe hop on that free webinar with you?
Yeah, so come to victoriawieck.com. And when you do that, Victoria Wieck, it's Victoria, like Queen Victoria, VICTORIAWIECK.com. I have what I call, when I do my keynote speeches, a lot of times I do a thing called Building an Empire. And I look at the 6 things that every business entrepreneur needs to master to build an empire today. And I give you, I take one topic every month and I do like an hour webinar. The only thing is it's like limited to like 50 people. And I don't charge you for it. And there's no way you can pay for it. It's basically free, but I only want the 50 people, and I limit it to 50 because of I want to have a dialogue back and forth. But if you miss it that month, you might have to wait like 6 months because those topics rotate. And but anything, any of the topics you get, you're going to be so much better off having attended those webinars than not, because it's all original content. I don't believe in buzzwords or anything like that. I have lived every one of those words that I will be speaking about. A lot of them cost me a lot of money and time and agony. And I share them now joyfully to anybody who can use it.
If you're looking at connecting with Victoria, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have all of her links in there. And Victoria, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
Thank you, Lucy. Oh, by the way, one more thing I forgot to mention. Go to $1 Million Hobbies podcast also.
I'll have that link in the show notes as well.
Thank you. And you have an amazing podcast. And like I said earlier, nothing happens by chance and great things will come.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like